Just a few introductory remarks. Silent Highways had a long history of rejection. It was commissioned, a commission that I had to write in 2000 for a public event, which was a trip from Greenwich to Westminster by boat, interspersed with dance performances at Cutty Sark, Canary Wharf and South Bank. I was to get £1,000 to write it and then another £1,000 to read it on the boat. They paid me the £1,000 and then one of the choreographers objected that I hadn't mentioned Jack the Ripper. And so I was sacked from the project, no further cash. And like an out-of-town hitman, except that he's actually very much in and of our town, Ian Sinclair was hired to take over. The second rejection was my own. The poem was a fucking commission, I grumbled, and so not a natural outcome of my inspiration. Now, it took me 12 years to get over that, while the poems were moulded in a drawer. Finally, I looked at it and thought it's not so bad and started reworking it, and it was subsequently rejected by the Long Poem magazine. I think it was too long for them. That's actually the case for Boxing the Cleveland, which I entered into a competition in Wales, a long poem competition, and they stated that as the reason for rejection. And then it got finally sent to a poetry review where Maurice Rawdon rejected it as being too difficult to extract from, which is, I will concede, is fair enough, because I'm having quite a lot of difficulty working out what to read tonight. The other thing I should mention is that I didn't actually write a lot of it. You could call it a collage or a translation of many voices into the voice of one river. There's the voice of Edmund Spenser, there's Robert Burns, there's whole chunks of Henry Mayhew, and there's even T.S. Eliot gets a look in. And these disparate voices had to be finessed in order to flow into the verse making, as water must be bent by the turns of a river, and that's how I conceived my job. Oh, another thing the choreographer had objected to was that I'd come up with Pocahontas, who'd had the misfortune to have been Disneyfied around 2000. She somehow thought that was too vulgar. You'll recall that Pocahontas flung her body over that of Captain Smith, saving him from the war club of her father, Powhatan, chief of chiefs. So I'm going to read one section. The book is in, the poem Silent Highway is in 4 sections: Heraclitus, Pocahontas, Windrush, and Uncle Rufus. And I'm going to read from 3 of those sections: Pocahontas, Windrush, and Uncle Rufus. Thus the river sanctions love and lust. For water, being water, isn't dust, and sailors like their ladies in less clothes than might seem proper, light shifts and bare toes. Call it then a short chemise or miniskirt that Nanny wears on board the Cutty Sark. Weird, perhaps, for a clipper ship to be christened after a sister of Old Nick. But Nanny, far above the rest, hard upon noble Maggie pressed, whose spring brought off her master Hale, but left behind her ain grey tail. And then to drink you are inclined, or Cutty Sarks run in your mind. Think ye may buy the joys o'er dear. Remember Tam O'Shanter's mare and Nanny's speed, which brought the tea from China each new season with a tail of old rope, painted grey within her clutch when she sailed in past Greenwich with a stack of well-aired twankey in her hold. Think of this silent highway, in its heyday anything but silent, silent now. But not when Pocahontas sailed this way on a sparkling morning, cloudless blue, a light wind helping and a silvery haze improving London town. But it was hard to walk so, in moccasins on cobblestones. Hard to be ignored by James I, though he looked fine in the palest blue on a foaming, fiery horse. And then, after a nicer interview with dour Sir Walter Raleigh, feverish in the Tower, who knew the doings of the Powhatan, hard to die in Gravesend of consumption within a year. Her long anticipation heralding so short a stay in London. Sweet Thames run softly till me end I saw. Me quit the West Indies and the journey be long. I daddy fly a Spitfire, he never come back. I Margie teach the school that we live in a shack. When Mr. Clement Attlee be driven by his wife in a Hillman minx, we think this is the life. When Mr. Harold Wilson make a bonfire of controls, we come to Great Britain to repair their holes. And when we see the chimneys ranged along the shore, we say with all them factories no one can be poor. Though me shiver for the cold on the Tilbury docks, me think about the gold to be put into a box. But they say if we admit them, damn it, that'll mean an ever greater influx of Jamaicans on the sea. So they grudge we our jobs and they don't let we places, because we is we, and they don't wear we faces. Thing is that they can't make head or tail of how we talk. Thing is that they don't say good day to we at work, and if we ride the bus then no one sit beside we, and they all hide their eye, and they rail and they deride we, and we sleeping in the street and it's hard for we to stick it. But then me think, at least we can beat them at the wicket. All the sweat of working be to set things up back home, and it's more than 50 years and me still on the road. Man, it's just the women here who make me feel alive. Had I shared them since the day me arrived. Ain't they lain beside me the smooth night long? Sweet Thames run softly till me end I saw. Launched with a huge array of cast iron ornament, notably shields displaying the crest of the London, Chatham and Dover Railway Company, daubed in heraldic colours but declared by the public a monstrosity, Blackfriars merged with the nearby bridge of St. Paul's. The merger brought it pulpits and parapets. On the 15th of June 1982, 4 years after the assassination of a rather decent pope, the body of Roberto Calvi was found at the end of a rope beneath the granite arches of this bridge, his hands tied behind his back, his jacket pocket weighed down by a brick. Blackfriars marks the corner of that square mile that keeps the city split off from the town. Deeply involved in a fraudulent Vatican loan, which led to the implosion of his banco, Calvi fled to England carrying a portmanteau filled with ambrosial banknotes. Banking on a deal with Opus Dei, whereby they would acquire a holding in his bank by paying off the mafia, Calvi was obliged to bankroll Propaganda Due. Bankrupt and corrupted by its puppet master Jelly, while frantically attempting to plug the gaping hole in his bank books, he had agreed to launder the drug-engendered profits of the Corleone family. He never laundered the money, though. Instead, he borrowed it to keep his ship afloat. Opus Dei reckoned that with Calvi dead, the total collapse of his stocks would result, and this in turn dislodge their powerful enemies in the Curia, opening the way for them to gain total dominance of the Vatican. It was revealed by a mafia informer that Calvi had been strangled by the mafia's London-based heroin traffic manager. Bridges are the sacred responsibility of the Whitefriars of Paris. But this is the bridge of the Masons, of the shadowy practitioners of corporate piracy, the mighty of the mercantile world, those who dictate that Canary Wharf shall be shaped like an obelisk, and that its shadow shall fall over Hawksmoor's church with the pyramid beside the gate at Limehouse. Some say Captain Smith was a Mason, and so was Powhatan, who knew him by some sign, and this saved Smith, and it was nothing to do with Pocahontas. In this reach, on an August night in 1989, 200 young people were partying aboard that tidy pleasure boat, the Marchioness. Thank you very much.